What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Woodward Pistons Draft Show. I am Steve. I'm your host here. Before we get started, I want to remind you to follow us at Woodward Pistons on Instagram and on Twitter, and definitely subscribe to our channel here on YouTube where you're watching this piece, and hit that like button because you know you want to get more draft stuff coming through. Today, I'm going to keep it real with you, but I'm also going to give you a little bit of positivity to go along with it. So, how am I going to keep it real with you? Number one, let's talk about lottery odds. I know we all want to win the number one overall pick. We all want the Detroit Pistons to be selecting Victor Wembanyama in the 2023 NBA draft. But I'm here and I always try and keep it real, not try to pump up anything that isn't real, and try to really just focus in on what the most logical or what the most probable outcomes are in everything, whether that be player analysis, the player comps I give, and here with lottery odds. So we know the Pistons had the worst record in the NBA this past season. We know they have one of the top odds for the lottery, but I'm gonna break it down for you here. They have a 14% chance of winning the number one overall pick. And again, that's an even split between the top three picks. So Detroit, Houston, San Antonio, they all have a 14% chance. After that, they also have even odds at the number two spot. They all have a 13.4% chance at number two, and they all have the similar odds, the same odds at number three with 12.7 for all three of those. So those are the odds for 1, 2, and 3. Thankfully, the highest of those numbers is at 14% at number one. And oh, by the way, they all also have identical odds at number 4 at 12%. Where it starts to differ is at number 5. Detroit can fall no further than 5 since they did have the worst record in the NBA, and the odds for that pick are 47.9%. They have by far and away the highest odds of landing the number 5 overall pick yet again this year. So I'm just trying to prepare everybody and keep it real that the most likely outcome is the Pistons falling to number 5. And I mean, I'm somebody that will always say it's Detroit versus everybody and everything. They didn't give Cade the rookie of the year. Ivy may get snubbed from first team, which would be ridiculous in my opinion. But again, it's Detroit versus everybody, right? They won the number one overall pick with Cade. The league probably ain't going to give it to us again. But number 5, nobody should be down, because this is not a bad thing if the team gets the number 5 overall pick. Why might that be, you might ask? Well, let's move along in the conversation and talk about tiers. What do I mean by tiers? Every draft has different tiers of players. It's not only like who goes ranked 1 to 100 or 1 to 58, because this year it's only 58 picks, or normally in a year where the picks aren't forfeited or there aren't forfeited picks, it's 1 to 60. Within those rankings, whatever you have, there are going to be tiers. Not every draft evaluator uses them, but I like to use them because to me, I'm always trying to figure out, okay, well, who are the players I think have the most potential? Who are the players I think have like starter level potential? Who are the players I think can be in a rotation? And who are the ones that I think have less than that, to where I'm like, you know what, I probably wouldn't draft them in the first or the second round, but I would still take a chance on them as an undrafted free agent. There's that. For me, I try and separate it between like, okay, every year, is there one player at the top that separates themselves? Are there 2 players that separate themselves? Are those top players like above and beyond the normal potential? Are they below that normal potential? And then after that, it is like, okay, who has all NBA potential? Who has all-star potential? Who has starter potential? Who has potential to be in the NBA rotation for a long time? And then after that, it's like, okay, who has at least 1 or 2 skills that even if they were an undrafted free agent, they could be somebody like a Duncan Robinson, to where you're like, you know what? I saw that guy shooting threes like nobody's business at Michigan when I was sitting in the stands watching Zach Irvin and Karis LeVert and those teams, thinking like, you know what, this skinny looking white kid, I don't know, there's something about him that makes me think he could at least be in somebody's rotation. Definitely never thought he would be what he is today, but we're thinking about tiers in that regard. Why do I start the conversation here? Well, if you follow any draft expert this season, whether it be Rafael Barlow at NBA Big Board, whether it be the No Ceilings Collective there, whether it be Mavs Draft, whether it be Draft Dummies, whether it be Global Scouting, Ignacio Risotto, our guy, Mr. Draft Deeper, and of course, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops and Draft Digest, they're all going to say the same thing. This class has a lot of guys at the top that have really, really good potential. The way that I frame it and why I'm making this video now is I think there are 7 guys in this draft that have clear all NBA potential. And I want to start talking about the tiers in this regard. Wembanyama is obviously the number 1 overall guy. He is in a tier in and of himself, by himself, on his own. I think everybody's said that by now. Body type, skills, movement ability, IQ. We just have never seen anybody like this. 7'4", 7'5", 7'3", somewhere in there. 220, somewhere 240 pounds, an 8-foot wingspan, shoots threes, can defend it on the perimeter, is one of the best instinctive shot blockers you will ever see. As we went over with Ignacio Risotto last week, this guy has the potential to be the best player in the NBA, and it's just somebody we've never seen before. So he's in the alien tier, as I've called it, at the top, because there's just not too many human beings that have ever been produced like that. There's been the joke that a lot of people have made of like he's the real world Monstar from, Space Jam movies come to life. I mean, that's really what it's come down to. He is in a class by himself, might be the best prospect to ever be evaluated in the NBA draft. Below that, for me at least, is Scoot Henderson in a tier I like to call always in contention for the top spot. I am somebody that believes Scoot Henderson would be always in consideration for the number 1 overall pick in the majority of drafts because of his skill level. And why I still want to put him separate from the people that are below him is just you don't see too many guys being able to run a professional team at 17 and 18 years old. You just don't see his level of athleticism, and combined with point guard skills where he knows how to operate and pick and roll. He's a very good passer. He has a mid-range game that is very advanced. So he still is in that tier to where it's like, you obviously got to take Wembanyama, but you can't discount Scoot and everything that he's done. And really still, you got to keep him at number 2, in my opinion. After that, the next 5 guys are what I like to call, they are the 3rd pick. That's the thing I've named for that tier below Scoot, because really these 5 guys, if any of them could go number 3, and for me, I would be like, that makes total sense. And I would not have a problem with any of them going number 3. So 7 guys. The furthest the Pistons can fall is to number 5, and there's 7 guys that, in my opinion, all of them have all NBA potential, even the guy at number 7. Again, Wembanyama at the top could be the best player in the league. Scoot, super advanced. And then below that, we have a couple different guys along the way that have a bunch of things in common. First, I want to tell you what they have in common before I start to list them. The things these guys in the tier I like to call, they are the 3rd pick, the number 3 through the number 7 prospects on my big board anyway. They can all defend the small forward position because they are all listed at 6'7" or taller, and they all have the requisite defensive skills and shown defensive skills that they can guard that small forward position, which again is something the Pistons desperately need. Of the guests we've had on, from Motor City Hoops to Draft Deeper to Ignacio Risotto, I have not really prepped any of them of like, hey, talk about, draft needs or whatever. They've all come up with the same thing, right? A wing defender and somebody that could potentially have the creation ability. We'll get into that more, but these guys at 3 to 7, they can all defend the small forward position, and they're all 6'7" or taller. The other thing that they all have in common is they all have major upside in one crucial area. Maybe some of them are fantastic defenders and have all defensive potential. Maybe some of them have this next level athleticism that you could buy into and you don't see in too many people. And other of them are just offensive explosions on the court that you just don't find that mixture of skills or that level of ability in somebody 6'7" or taller. So again, these guys from 3 to 7, they can all defend the small forward position. They all have major upside in one crucial area, and they are all going to be 6'7" or taller. Now, I'm going to list these guys. I'm not going to list them in the particular order that I ranked them. This is in no particular order. I'm just going to list them off in random order. And the reason why is I'm going to sell you on all of these guys because, again, if the Pistons fall to pick number 5, these are the guys that we're talking about. One of them might go to 3, one of them might go 4, but then there are going to be these other guys that are left there for the Pistons to select. So again, this is in no particular order. And my point is this: I'm going to sell you them all and give you the elevator pitch, per se, if you want to call it that. Or I know my guys on the Draft Act call it the sell me this pen pitch. So that's what I'm going to do here. No particular order. I will do more detailed scouting reports on them in the future, if you can find those here, if we do fall below 1 or 2. And then you will find them at my Substack as well, resball.substack.com. So keep on the lookout for that. But who are we going to start with here? Again, this is the guys that can go number 3. And if they fell to 5, one of these guys might be there. The first guy I want to start with is Ausar Thompson. Ausar Thompson is coming out of the overtime elite. He is listed at 6'7". He is listed at 209 pounds for the season. At overtime elite, he scored 16.4 points per game, pulled in 5.9 rebounds, dished out 5.9 assists, and snatched 2.3 steals and had 0.9 blocks per game. The shooting splits on the season for Ausar Thompson was 66.2% from 2-point range, 25% from 3-point range, and then 65.6% from that free throw line. Ausar Thompson is maybe the best athlete in this class. I mean, if you want to talk about size and just relative to being able to do that at that size, Wembanyama is far and away above the best athlete. But in terms of explosion, in terms of lateral ability, in terms of quickness and speed, Ausar has it all. He can just jump up and explode and throw down a big dunk or catch a big lob at any single time that he wants to. Sam Vecini of the Game Theory podcast and of The Athletic, one of the top draft evaluators in NBA draft and online journalism world, has called him a walking paint touch. At that size, 6'7", 209, he does have point guard skills, and to me is a point guard. I know there are people in the Pistons community that want to sell him elsewhere. To me, that would be a really big disservice, because at that size, 6'7", 209, and with that athleticism and with this ability to get in the paint whenever you want to, that's the major selling point for Ausar Thompson. You give him the ball, he is going to get easy shots for his teammates, and he's going to get in that paint, either draw contact or he's just going to finish no matter what. Yes, there are shooting concerns, but you really normally always bet on this type of athleticism and the passing ability as well. It's just not seen in a player this size very often. The other thing you got to consider with Ausar Thompson too is that I gave you the regular season stats. In the playoffs, he was even better. They had a 5-game playoff there for the overtime elite. He scored 17.2 points per game, so that was up. 7.2 rebounds, that also went up. 9.2 assists, that went way up. And then 1.6 steals per game, a little bit less, and then 0.6 blocks per game, a little bit less as well. But most of those counting stats went up tremendously. 52.4% from 2-point range, 30% from 3 on 4 attempts per game. And then he had 77.4% from the free throw line on 6.2 attempts per game. So again, 5 games, I know it's a small sample, but this is their playoffs. It was the best of the best teams playing each other. So that is always a good indication to me of when the competition goes up. You see their ability and their desire to take more shots, and their efficiency in things go up like that as well too. You cannot undersell how great of a ball handler Ausar is, combined with that athleticism, combined with that passing. I hesitate to bring up the name of Giannis, but I mean, at the ceiling, obviously Ausar's not that size, but this is the type of force that we're talking about, where the athleticism and the skills and the passing are just such that, you know what, the shooting might not even matter, that it's not really a factor in that case. And if you listen to my podcast, I don't want this just to be like Pump Up Resball Pod, but I did dive into both Ausar and Ausar. Maybe it's like episode 2 or 3 for the Resball Pod of Does Shooting Even Matter? And there are a couple guys that helped me to think about the Thompson twins, because I was very hesitant and very resistant at first. But I wanted to dive in to see if there were prospects that had really bad free throw and 3-point attempts that ended up being very useful players. And Jalen Brown, DeJounte Murray, and Pascal Siakam were the ones to me that were the most helpful. There was a bigger list of that, but especially those three, like they all have athleticism and they all have these other skills. Like DeJounte is a fantastic passer and defender. Pascal Siakam has that defensive versatility to be able to guard anywhere from 3 to the 5 and has done so there. And then, as I forget who the other one I just mentioned was, Jalen Brown. As a Piston fan, I try to just blank out Celtics as much as possible, I guess. Jalen Brown speaks for himself. He's the one that really put in extra time and work, and the shooting really came around in his second year in the league. And again, you look at his first year in the league, and the stats are kind of blah, but he worked on those small things and became a good shooter. But even somebody like a DeJounte Murray, if Ausar Thompson becomes like that, where he's more of a driver, more of that pure point, and can defend the point guard position at 6'7", 209 pounds, and oh, by the way, is like an Andre Iguodala type level athlete, maybe even a little bit more, then you're talking about a guy that will get to the free throw line and again be your primary point. I know the fit is odd here with the Pistons, but he's the level of talent that you just can't pass up, and maybe he is the one that ends up slotting more into that small forward position next to Cade, and Cade and Ivy end up having more shooting, and maybe Amen runs the second unit to start off his career, but that athleticism you just cannot discount, and you want to bet on that no matter what. Next on the list is Amen's brother, Ausar Thompson. Ausar, for the season, scored 16.3 points per game, pulled in 7.1 rebounds, dished out 6.1 assists per game, and then grabbed 2.4 steals and had 1.1 blocks per game as well. Shooting splits for Ausar were 56.2% from 2-point range, 29.8% from 3-point range, and then 66.2% from the free throw line. Ausar did win their MVP of the OTE. And again, he was another one, just like his brother, where all the counting stats went up and got tremendously better in their 5-game playoff. 21 points per game, 5.2 rebounds. That was a little bit down from where it was in the regular season. 4.8 assists per game, also a little bit down. And then 2 steals per game, 0.8 blocks. In these 5 games in their playoffs, Ausar shot 50% from 2-point range, 38.5% from 3-point range, and then 82.4% from the free throw line. The 3-point shot and the free throw percentage really, really, really improved in the playoffs. And that's part of my selling point with Ausar is, when you look at his shooting journey over the last year, it's been quite a ride. I know you look at that 29.8% in the regular season, and you're probably still worried. But when you look at the two twins too, and it sucks, they're going to be compared with each other. They've come up with each other. They're right there next to each other. Of course, they're going to be compared with each other. But why I like Ausar better than Amen, spoiler alert, I think Ausar has a lot more supplementary skills and has developed more off-ball things, like the shooting and putting the work in to do that more from just spot up. And if he can just attack spot ups in his first couple of years, that is going to be a big thing. He is not quite the same level athlete that his brother is. I know I said an Andre Iguodala type athlete with Amen, but maybe the more apropos level of athleticism would be like Amen's like Vince Carter, and Ausar is like Andre Iguodala. One is obviously this like, whoa, where did that come from? This is amazing type of athlete. And the other one is still like, man, this guy will throw down dunks. And I think Ausar, Andre Iguodala is not exactly the comp, but I think that still level of defender to where he can win a finals MVP just basically off his defense. And he is a very good passer as well, where the shot has to come around. Instinctive scorer. And I think Ausar has more of like power forward-ish roles in him. I know I started off with the shooting journey, but I love Ausar and all the things he does so much. So we'll go down this road first. Maybe the most underrated cutter in the draft, in my opinion. Like, not only will he find the back door and get to the basket, but he will find a way to get easy lobs. And to me, this is one of the guys that profiles is like, man, I think this would be a perfect teammate for Cade, because we all know how much Cade loves his lob passes. And Ausar already has that natural ability of like, you line me in the corner, I'm not going to hesitate to take that open corner three, but I'm also going to instinctively find when that center or when that power forward comes a little bit too much off the ball handler and they let me cut back door, bam, an easy 2 points. And then again, I think he and Cade would have fantastic chemistry just off of cuts alone, number one. So I talked about the shooting journey. Ausar's shooting journey over the past year has been banana, to say the least. In the preseason, I believe they played about 5 games. Let me look at this before I misspeak, because on their website you will find they list 4, one against Adelaide 36ers, one against West Oaks, one against Queens Defenders, and then excuse me, their final preseason game against Orangeville Prep. The one they do not list for some reason, I'm not sure why, is against Mega, which is a professional team over in the Adriatic League where Nikola Durasic plays. It was a big profile game too, so again, I don't know why they don't list that. But in the preseason, Ausar, everybody was like hyping up Amen because they see all the ball skills. They see he's a tall point guard with that athleticism, but everybody's like, I don't really know what Ausar is. And if he doesn't shoot and he doesn't have the ball skills and the passing of his brother, live dribble passing of his brother, then like what exactly is he? Because he'll need to shoot and be more of an off-ball role if he doesn't prove to have those same kind of ball skills. So it comes into the preseason with that on him. Shoots 1 for 17 in those 5 preseason games, 5.9%. So to say there was worry is an understatement. Then season starts, and in games 1 through 10, in 16 games, so there's 16 games in the Overtime Elite schedule. So games 1 through 10, Ausar shot 13 of 36, which was 36.1% on 3.6 attempts per game. So it's pretty good volume. And again, it's like, okay, he's putting them up. You can see he's put time and effort into this. And he's not turning down open looks. That's one of the bigger differences to me between Amen and Ausar. I know I said I wouldn't like really get into their quirks, but I think it's helpful to differentiate, especially for the Pistons, why I would be more in on Ausar than Amen. Like Amen will turn down open 3-point looks, whereas Ausar is like, I'm going to put him up because I know this has to be my role. So first 10 games, Overtime Elites season, regular season, 13 of 36. That's 36.1% on 3.6 attempts per game. So it's like, okay, maybe he's got this shot. Maybe it's going to be okay. There's some stiff mechanics, but it's great that the percentage is good and he's shooting them. In games 11 through 16, however, Ausar shot 5 of 24 from 3-point range on 4. So that's 4 attempts per game. And then he was 20.8% from 3. So it started to become more of a worry at the end of the season. And that's what ended up dragging the percentage down from 36 to 29.8 across the full 16 games. And again, why I am so bullish on Ausar is you saw the preseason was terrible. He could have just gone into the tank there, then ended up shooting well in 10 games, went in the tank again in games 1 through 16. Then in their playoffs, the 5 games, he was 15 of 39, excuse me. He sank 15 of 39 shots for that 38.5% on 7.8 attempts per game. This is when the attempts were really jacked up, and you could see he understood I have to space out the floor. And also, to me, what makes me believe in you the most about shooting is that you keep putting them up, because as a shooter, that's one of the things, the only way to get out of a slump is to keep shooting. And when you're learning how to shoot at that level, the only way you get better at it is, again, put them up. And number 2, you have to do it under live fire, which is what Ausar did here. He's not doing it in an empty gym. He didn't do it like right now during the workout season. He put in the time and effort. And again, that last 6 games where he was 20.8%, you could have easily just gone in the tank or been like, you know what, I'm not going to shoot it. I don't want to worry or ruin whatever my draft status may be. He put up even more, and he was rewarded with that 38.5%. So that's a good indicator to me. So you have this off-ball ability. He does have good skills of like secondary to third scorer. I've heard a lot of people compare him to Andrew Wiggins. I don't think it's like that. Even though Andrew Wiggins is good, I still think that Ausar has better ability than that. Why I say like Andre Iguodala type. Again, I really buy into the wing defense to where this is a guy that can guard shooting guards and small forwards. They list Ausar now on Overtime Elite's website at 6'7", 215 pounds. I do not know if that is really correct. And I only say that because he doesn't seem that much bulkier or seem that much different in body type to his brother. But again, I'm probably one of the worst people to like really eyeball it and know the judge. And it's hard to tell like just watching through TV unless you're right there next to him. But if he's 6'7", 215, again, that size and ability to go from shooting guard all the way to power forward, even in today's small ball NBA. But I do think he's a great defender, and I think he would be better defending the wings. He and his brother are still a little bit upright in their defensive positioning, and they don't really sit down in a stance as much. And I think that would hurt you more if you're a guard defender, because in the NBL, those guys are quicker. You got to get down more in your stance and move side to side laterally a little bit more. Whereas at the wing position, it's still going to be a thing, and they're obviously both going to have to work on it, including Ausar. But I think he's better prepared and better set up with his good athleticism, with his good vertical ability to go from two anywhere to the power forward defending that position. So I buy into the shooting. I really like his off-ball abilities, and he does have upside to be able to be like a number 2 or a number 3 option. Again, think Andre Iguodala. It's not 100% comp, but it's close. You want a guy like that. Andre Iguodala was number 2 with Iverson on that Philadelphia team when he was drafted. He went over to Denver in that weird trade. He was there only there for one season, but they won 57 games with him as the best player on that team, and then ended up with Golden State, and the rest is history. Again, he took a back seat because he wanted to win, and he ended up winning the Finals MVP. This is the kind of player that you could still get at the number 5 slot. Next is Brandon Miller. Brandon Miller is probably the easiest case to make, and why so many people are pushing him up the board, because he just shot the lights out, and he's a solid defender too. He's the one that I have the most questions about on defense, but I'm also not, it's nothing that would make me think, oh, he's going to get cooked or anything like that. It's just this pool of other guys, and you'll definitely see with the guys ahead of him. And just like you saw now with Amen and Ausar, if you followed Amen and Ausar, again, Amen's a different level athlete. Ausar is really good. So it's tough to be in that class of athlete. Brandon Miller still is a technician on offense, and I think you see some of those technician things come up on defense with like weak side rim protection and being a guy that chase down blocker. And one of the things, I'll get to the scoring. I know you're probably like, come on, Steve, we want to hear about, his shooting and if he can be like a number 2, but I want to start here with Brandon Miller, and that he's an incredibly underrated rebounder. If you look at his stats, 8.2 rebounds per game this season. The totals on it, though, 305 rebounds. That's something I don't think the consensus and like a lot of scouting reports are selling on him. 305 rebounds. That means he is eating glass, especially on that Alabama team where you would think he would just kind of be protected and they would get another junk guy or the center just to eat up all those rebounds. But no, he's pulling in a ton of rebounds. And again, he's not the top level athlete, but he's a technician who knows positioning. He understands how to utilize his size. He's listed at 6'8", 6'9", somewhere in there. Now, if you look at Sports Reference, they say 6'9". At the beginning of the season, it said 6'8", so we'll see. At 200 pounds, you think he would be easily pushed around, but he's really not. He seems like he has a good base. Has some pretty long limbs. I'm not sure the wingspan, but on film, to me, it seems like he understands how to use his lankiness and really pull in the rebounds. Again, 305 rebounds speaks for themselves. Brandon Miller might be the best pure offensive guy out of this group in like they are the 3rd pick. And again, it is an easy sell. As a freshman at Alabama, he led that team in just about every scoring type category. They went into the NCAA tournament a number 1 seed with the target painted on their back because Brandon Miller played lights out. 18.8 points per game, those 8.2 rebounds, 2.1 assists, 0.9 steals per game, 0.9 blocks, shooting splits of 48.3% from 2-point range, 38.4% from 3-point range, and then 85.9% from that free throw line. If you look at the true shooting percentage is a, amalgamation. It's a sum of putting together the 2-point shots, 3-point shots, and free throws to be like, okay, what percentage do those all kind of equal out to? If you don't know like what the good percentage and bad percentage are, 55% is about average for just about anybody. If they're a number 1 guy and they're like a Kevin Durant to where he's the only guy on the team you really want to give the ball and score to, and he's like at 55% true shooting, that's fine. If they're above 55%, that means they're pretty good. If they're in 56, 57, a little above average. 58 to 60 is really good, and anything over 60 is fantastic. Brandon Miller being that number one scoring option for Alabama, who ended up being one of the number one teams, in the NCAA tournament. I believe they were still ranked number one there at the end of the year. 58.3% true shooting percentage, not wasting many shots there. And then three-point attempt rate of 53.5%. So that means over half of Brandon Miller's attempt come from three-point range. He took 7.5 per game. That's one of the major selling points of Brandon Miller. 6'8", 6'9", to be able to put up that volume of shots. Over half of your shots are coming from downtown, and then you are knocking them down at 38.4%. There's just not many guys that size that can knock down threes like that, whether covered, open, off the dribble, pick and pop, whatever. He is going to knock them down. And it's, again, he is the easiest sell, I think, out of the bunch, and the one you can just see right away. This guy's just going to work in the NBA. I know I've heard like the Jabari Smith comp out there. If you're going to compare him to Jabari Smith, I don't know, like, you're not watching Brandon Miller. They are two completely separate players. Jabari was a guy that really had great defensive ability, maybe couldn't dribble past like 3 dribbles. The ball skills were a big question. That is not the case with Brandon Miller. He can shoot very well. I think he's a better volume three-point shooter than Jabari. And he had 4.6 free throw attempts per game, 85.9%, 170 total free throws this year. That's what really separates him from somebody like a Jabari Smith. I've likened Brandon Miller to like a Peja Stojakovic. I think it's probably like it is ceiling. It's going to be better than that. But if you're like a keep it real, what's like somewhere between the floor and the ceiling, Peja was like number 2 on a good night, number 3 every night. And again, if it's better than that, then again, we're talking about all NBA just based off of offense. You can't say enough about what Brandon Miller did on the basketball court this season. Again, 48 from 2, 38 from 3, 85.9% on 18.8 points per game as a freshman on the number 1 team in the nation. I know many of you think Brandon Miller should be number 2, and I get the reasoning for it. I really do, even if I disagree with it. But yeah, if he went number 3, that's the one that most people think is the easiest to project, because everything in that profile is great. The last part on Brandon Miller, excuse me, just to get an idea of like how good of a defender he is, because I don't think he's necessarily like the man-to-man guy the way these other guys on this list are going to be, but 91.9% defensive, 91.9 defensive rating, that is very good. That means that like you're defending your position, you're not giving up any easy points. Anything under 100 is like okay. Anything around 90 is like, okay, yeah, you're getting after it and you're actually paying attention and knowing your assignment and doing these things. Yeah, I think he's more positional, but it's clear that he's not going to be exposed and he's not a liability on defense, far from it. The next guy on our list is one that I think like Piston fans are kind of like either all in or not all in on, because I think his position is a great mystery to a lot of people, and that's Jarace Walker. I'm a big Jarace Walker fan. I mean, I'm just going to come out and say it. And I am one of the, what's the word I'm looking for? I think I might be the only voice though saying this, though. I'm not even one of the, I might be the only voice saying, I believe that Jarace Walker could be like an OG Anunoby in the league, where he can play the 3, he can play the 4. I don't know if he can go to shooting guard, which is what OG Anunoby played this year with Toronto, pretty banana. But I think Jarace Walker profile is very similar to an OG Anunoby. Defensive monster. I said it with Draft Deeper. It is a rare thing to see a freshman come into a program that has national title aspirations, and they're like, you, sir, are going to be our defense. It happens actually a lot with offense. You think about it every year. Paulo, Cade, all these guys as freshmen come in and they're like, okay, you will run our offense. That happens every year, right? But it's incredibly rare that a freshman has that ability, that IQ, that awareness, that those instincts to be able to run a defense and be the centerpiece of a defensive scheme, which is what Jarace Walker was for Houston. And oh, by the way, he was also their second leading scorer for that team. The counting stats are going to be underwhelming, and you're going to be like, this can't be a number 3 overall pick. Well, hold on just a second, okay? So Jarace Walker's counting stats will give you just, the general overview. 11.2 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 1 steal, 1.3 blocks. Shooting splits are 51.5% from 2-point range, 34.7% from 3-point range, and then 66.3% from that free throw line. The true shooting percentage to 53.4%. That's below average. So you're going to be like, yeah, I don't know about this. Number one, multi-position defender. I started off with that conversation of him being really the focal point and, Houston's defense. I mean, you just look at it in the NCAA tournament. He had 6 blocks against Auburn in their second round game. Just fantastic defensive instincts, and it was amazing to see him just get better and better as the season wore on. You can't say enough about this man's defensive ability, and it's not just as a shot blocker. If you watch any games of Jarace Walker, you will see him guard point guards, you will see him guard shooting guards, you will see him guard small forwards, you will see him guard power forwards, you will see him guard centers. He guarded everybody in the NCAA. Is he a 5-position defender in the NBA? I do not believe so. He is supposedly has a 7'2" wingspan. I never know what these are until the combine measurements prove them. So I will say supposedly, or like this is what it's been reported, because you never know. There are a lot of people that are listed at 6'5" and then they go to the combine and they're magically 6'2". I don't know if Jarace Walker is that, but listed at 6'8", 235, 240, I've seen him listed at both, is a tank that is super mobile to be able to guard point guards in the NCAA and has that strength to be able to run center. He had really good block on Brandon Miller if you want to just look at like one highlight block play when they played Alabama. But I mean, that Auburn game where he had those 6 blocks, that's probably the one to look at. 10 rebounds, 6 blocks. Yeah, you just don't see this in a freshman this often. Again, I don't think he's a 5-position defender in the NBA. Number one, because I'm maybe one of the few that I'm like, I don't know if he could be a small ball 5, which might be a problem for some teams, but it's definitely not a problem for the Pistons. And I'm not sure he's quick enough to guard point guards in the NBA. So 2 through 4, again, that's still great. And again, what the Pistons need, especially at the small forward position. I know there might be Piston fans out there that are like, but he's so close to Isaiah Stewart, which I say, no, they are different players. Number one, I think Houston didn't give Jarace Walker enough offensive shine. In high school, this is a guy that averaged 4.1 assists per game as a senior, and passing was something he had throughout all 4 years. If there was anybody that I was going to sell people on about like, hey, you remember Bam Adebayo and how after he displayed all these passing skills in the NBA, he was like, oh yeah, I used to do that stuff in high school. If there's anybody that would happen to again, it's going to be Jarace Walker. That was the one thing that really stood out to me in all the high school stuff and the preparation I did coming into the year. Like, man, this guy really knows how to pass the ball, like from the mid post, the high post, from top of the key. A lot of it is standstill, but as a forward, as a power forward, as a big man in high school, he was always able to find cutters. He played with Keontae George at IMG Academy. They had a really good rapport, and he understood that Keontae is a bucket. I just need to get him the ball in his spots or on the move like that. That's another thing that I think an NBA team is going to unlock, and they're going to find themselves pleasantly surprised. If you listen to the Draft Deck and the No Ceilings podcast, you can find them anywhere. You can find podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google. Marcus Sasser did an interview, I think it was with Corey Talaba, and he said he thought Jarace Walker had one of the best handles on that Houston team. And on a team with Marcus Sasser, Jamal Shed, and Tremont Mark, who all good ball handlers in their own right, that's high praise. And they didn't really ask him to do those things at Houston as well. So I am going to sell you again and again and again on Jarace Walker's upside on offense. 22.4% usage. That's like we're giving you some usage, but you're not like the primary guy. This is more of like, okay, you're probably like 2 or 3. So again, there is a lot more to unlock between the passing and the ball handling ability. And another thing that really helped me like want to sell people more and more on Jarace Walker is the more and more they turned the offense over to him and they gave him more shots at Houston, he just rewarded them with more points and just more and more abilities on offense and unlocking more of his game. In the final 21 games of Houston season, really it's the full calendar year of 2023, Jarace Walker scored 13 points per game, pulled in 7.4 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 1 steal, 1.5 blocks on shooting splits of 53.8% from 2-point range, 34.2% from 3-point range, and then 64.8% from that free throw line. True shooting percentage goes up to 54.5%. So it is right there around average as he's getting more usage. Those are positive indicators to me of like, okay, when we're starting to give you more shots and you're scoring more points, your efficiency goes up. Fantastic. And then look at those. I know everybody calls it stocks. I kind of like don't like that term because I'm an old man like that, but has always averaged 1 steal and over 1 block no matter what. So this is a guy that, again, I will end the conversation there. Defensively versatile, that will guard multiple positions. I think on the Pistons, this is somebody that can be like an OG Anunoby, where you're just going to have your wing defender there. He and Beef Stew could be a nightmare on defense. I believe Beef Stew will continue to space the floor out. I think Jarace Walker will continue to get better there as well. And by the way, he has these passing and ball handling abilities that he could slot into the small forward position. And I keep saying triple beef. Wembanyama and Jarace Walker, I think, could be like Cade, Ivy, Jarace, Beef Stew, Jalen Duren, or Cade, Ivy, Beef Stew, Victor Wembanyama, and Jalen Duren. Triple beef lineups. Those would be awesome and fantastic. I would be so excited for either one of those. So don't sleep on Jarace Walker. We know we love our defense in Detroit, and Jarace Walker, there are few better than this guy. Next, and finally on the list, is Cam Whitmore, who's gaining more and more traction by a lot of people on Pistons Twitter and out there in the interwebs, as I speak like an old man, for being the number 4 guy on a lot of people's boards. Again, this is another guy that you have to kind of sell based off of not just the counting stats, because his counting stats are going to be less than a lot of other people. 12.5 points per game, 5.3 rebounds, 0.7 assists, 1.4 steals, and then 0.3 blocks per game. Shooting splits of 57.8% from 2-point range, 34.3% from 3-point range, and then 70.3% from that free throw line. Is listed at 6'7", 232 pounds. Another great athlete here. Explosive, more of a, like I kind of get my momentum and build up type of athlete, but man, he threw down some monster dunks all year and is a guy that is a point of attack defender. You don't think that he's going to be that, but at 6'7", 232, you think he's probably going to be more of like this power forward, and with that leaping ability, he's probably going to get up and block a lot of shots. But they utilized him at Villanova more as this like, okay, go out there on the point guard or go out there on the ball handler. And he did a fantastic job. More and more people are starting to catch on to that Cam Whitmore's defensive ability is really good. And as a man-to-man on-ball defender, fantastic. That's one of the big selling points for me on Cam Whitmore is, yeah, this is the small forward defender that the Pistons absolutely need and would be a great complement in between Jaden Ivey and Beef Stew, or whoever the power forward may be, or if they're still playing Bojan at like the 4 in some lineups, again, that would be perfect. 57.1% true shooting percentage. That is good, above average. He really does not waste too many shots. If you watch a lot of Villanova basketball, it was not the prettiest of sights. A lot of times they were like, oh, the shot clock ran out. Cam, save us, go make a bucket. Or it was like, hey, pass. Okay, somebody's got it in isolation. Cam, go make something happen. 57.1% is good for that kind of offense. They also did not move the ball well. I know a lot of people are out there saying like, Cam Whitmore can't pass. He can pass. It's Villanova that can't pass. I believe their top playmaker had like 86 assists. Their top playmaker was around 21%. Assist percentage, everybody else was like under 17. They just did not move the ball very well. And Cam's not a point guard. If you're not a primary ball handler who's been asked to create for yourself, that is a tough task. And Villanova is in this weird transition. As Jay Wright is no longer the coach, Kyle Neptune's still getting his system in place there. So there's that to consider. It doesn't excuse that Cam Whitmore's underdeveloped as a passer, I guess is the way to put it. But also, again, on the Resball pod, I did one episode on G.G. Jackson and on Cam Whitmore and assist percentage, like the historic. Let's look at this and see guys that, who had over 25% usage and had an assist percentage under 10% and had, did they end up being good in the NBA? These guys that looked like they were ball hogs and didn't pass. Well, there's actually a lot of good guys on that list. John Collins was on that list. TJ Warren's on that list. Oh, and by the way, there's some guy named Kevin Durant on that list. So what I came out of it after looking at that and doing that research was like, you know what? When there are these guys like this, normally, who is the better option on that team? Ain't nobody passing the ball away from Kevin Durant, right? You don't want Kevin Durant to be out there trying to hunt shots for other people. You want KD putting up shots for himself because he knows how to score. That's my same argument with Cam. If you're going to look at that passing, again, think of that Villanova team. They just didn't have a lot of creators on it. Terrible passing team. And also, Cam was the best option many a night. But how might he be the best option, you might ask? Well, let me give you some statistics. Without Cam Whitmore, Villanova was 2-6. He missed some time in the beginning of the season with a shoulder injury. 7 games, they went 2-5. And then Cam had some minor injuries, didn't play their last game in the NIT. So they went 2-6. That's a 25% win percentage. Villanova with Cam Whitmore went 15-11, which is a 57.7% win percentage. Again, not fantastic, but above average and a gigantic improvement from that 2-6. And you could just see if you watch that film without Cam, they are lost a lot of times on offense. And Cam Whitmore's ability to create for himself and his gravity too. That's the biggest thing to me when I watch Cam more and more. It's like, yeah, defenses had to play Villanova a lot differently when they had this 6'7", 232-pound guy that can create for himself. And then on the other side of defense, it's like, he's on our point guard. What are we going to do? Our point guard's like 6 feet and 160, and we got this gigantic dude on him, and he's just smothering him. So Cam Whitmore, to me, profiles as like a number 2 option, has great ball skills, coming around as a shooter. And another guy that I'll sell you like I sold with Jarace Walker, where you look down the stretch, you see him becoming more comfortable in the offense, them giving him a little bit more usage and shine in the offense. In the last 18 games, Cam Whitmore put up 13.1 points per game, pulled in 4.9 rebounds, had 0.8 assists, 1.6 steals, 0.4 blocks. Shooting splits in these last 18 games are 58.4% from 2-point range, 37.2% from 3-point range, and then 66% from that free throw line. The true shooting percentage again goes up here, 58.6%. Again, that is always great to me when you see this guy get more comfortable, get more shots, and their true shooting percentage goes up. They become more efficient. Fantastic. I really love Cam Whitmore for that creation ability, his man-to-man defense, and the ability to be potentially a number 2 or number 3 guy. And again, he's the one that probably is the perfect fit between Ivy and whoever the power forward is. I believe it's Beef Stew, but he would be a perfect fit in Detroit. Again, defense and creation ability. I love me some Cam Whitmore. So again, getting the number 5 pick is not a bad thing. Without even listing the top 2 guys of Wembanyama and Scoot. Again, 7 guys. And in number 3 to number 7, we got Ausar Thompson, we got Ausar Thompson, we have Brandon Miller, we have Jarace Walker, and then we have Cam Whitmore as well. Getting the number 5 pick is not a bad thing if that were to happen, because all of these guys, in my opinion, have all NBA potential. A lot of them have great athleticism. Some of them have this featured scoring ability like a Brandon Miller. And then Jarace Walker, Cam Whitmore, even the Thompson twins, they have fantastic defensive ability. Jarace Walker has the potential to be an all-NBA defender. Cam Whitmore, Thompson twins all profile as like these fantastic number 2 options if they hit their ceilings. And has one of the high ceilings in the class. If we get the number 5 overall pick, do not panic, because many of these guys will be there, right? 7 guys, and you fall to number 5, that means 3 of them are still going to be there at number 5. It's going to be fantastic. We all want Wembanyama. Wembanyama is the golden goose, but do not fret if they fall to number 5. So who do you like the best out of these 5 prospects? Let us know in the comments. If the Pistons fall to 5, who do you think will still be there? Thank you so much for joining Joe D and I back here for another Woodward Pistons draft show. Again, I'm Steve. You can find me at ResballPod on Twitter. You can find me at ResballPod on Instagram. Please check out my Substack. Be dropping more scouting reports. I'll be updating my big board for the April update pretty soon, now that we've had a more list of who declared and who's maintaining their eligibility and who returned back to school. Look for that on resball.substack.com. Most importantly, subscribe to this YouTube channel every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time. You will catch me here on the Woodward Pistons Draft Show. Me and Joe D going to be here. You know what to see. And you got to subscribe to the channel as well. If you're not subscribed, hit that like button so we can keep aggregating, keep building up, and you can see more of our shining faces here between the Table Talk, all these other shows, Rod Beard, Jeff Iafrate, Sean Murphy, Jalen, Carl Collins, and the man, Mr. Brendan Dent, aka Detroit Kool-Aid. You will see us on the Table Talk this Thursday as well. Follow us on Twitter, Woodward Pistons. Follow us on Instagram, Woodward Pistons. So we will see you next time. Say bye, Joe. I don't know. He's still on the phone. I don't know if he's ever going to get off.